So let us begin. Get Lit number 2. Welcome. And I hope you all had a good week. And I'll ask you later to chime in with any book news or thoughts of your own, but I'll just tell you what I have to share with you tonight. Some of you, I love when you send me suggestions or questions or anything like that. So a couple of you pointed me toward some, sorry, I'm just going to open my chat, who pointed me towards some good, yes, I did record, thank you. Pointed me towards some interesting news in the world of publishing. And Patty, thank you for this one. Apparently the publishing world of France is in turmoil. Oh, Julie, maybe you can read the French publishing news. Julie is studying French. And it seems that the old guard is falling, ooh la la. And their world of cronyism is being exposed. So there are powerful editors who sit on prize committees and try to steer prizes toward authors whom they have published. And a much worse story is an openly pedophile writer who was protected for decades by France's literary, media, and political elite. But one of his accusers wrote a book that is now being translated around the world. So France is having a big Me Too moment, and this guy is being exposed. So things are really a mess in France. And I guess not only is that a story about the publishing world, but also about how a book can McBride, thanks for getting to this story about, well, you may remember last week when I talked about Ron Charles, who's the book critic for the Washington Post, and how he talked about Simon & Schuster, which is being in the process of being bought by Penguin Random House, and how he said that Simon & Schuster takes risks with political publishing and how that was so important, he felt. And they are publishing really on both sides of the aisle. And they had signed up to have a book published by Josh Hawley, but they announced on Thursday that they would cancel the upcoming publication of the senator's book, since he was not only one of several members of Congress who tried to overturn the result of the election, but he also was accused of helping to incite the mob that stormed the Capitol. He had a book called The Tyranny of Big Tech, and Simon & Schuster has made the decision not to publish it. They said in a statement, as a publisher, it will always be our mission to amplify a variety, take seriously our larger public responsibility as citizens, and cannot support Senator Hawley after his role in what became a dangerous threat. So again, I think that's that intersection of publishing and politics and the power of books is just really important. I don't know if any of you have ever read the author Eric Jerome Dickey. Is that a name who's familiar to you? He's written a lot of romance novels from the Black perspective, and he died this week at age 59 from cancer. So there was a lot of lamenting. He was a beloved literary figure and friend to many. So that's my publishing news for the moment. Now I'll go on to talk about some new books. Quickly, I'll go back to a few that we talked about last week. After we ended our session, I stayed up for hours reading some of the books that we talked about. I read that book Outlawed, which I had talked about, saying I loved how it was a Western from a female perspective. I have to say that it had a very young adult voice, and it really didn't hold me. So I'm not going to keep reading that one. And then there was that one, The Push, which was a psychological thriller about motherhood. And I read the first few chapters of that and I loved it. I can't wait to go back to that one. And then I spent a lot of time with, we talked about Martha Stewart. And I just have to say, I love her. All these things practical, and she gives you step-by-step instructions on how to do them, and they're actually really pretty. And hi Jane, hi Anne, and they're like cool, like painting the sides of a drawer when you open it. So when you open it, you see like a little pop of color. I'm like, I'm all sold on Martha Stewart again. All right. So here is what is new this week. Some of what is new. Okay. Saving Justice, Truth, Transparency, and Trust by James Comey. So, of course, we know James Comey as the FBI director who was fired by President Trump. His first book, A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies, and Leadership, came out in April of 2018, and he has already a new book. I looked at a couple of reviews. Michiko Kaku.
You're still freezing. You're still freezing.
Am I unfrozen?
Now you are.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I had Comcast here and everything, and they promised me they fixed it. So Michiko was the book reviewer for the New York Times. And she was just hugely powerful and scary and could destroy people quite easily or make their careers. And she's so smart and so knowledgeable, so well-read. And anyway, she still writes reviews once in a while, and she reviewed Comey's book. And she says, the central themes that Comey returns to throughout this impassioned book are the toxic consequences of lying and the corrosive effects of choosing loyalty to an individual over truth and the rule of law. She said that the book showcases the author's gift for narrative. On the other hand, Garrett Graff in Rolling Stone says, higher loyalty is, he says that this book was rather hurried and could have benefited from some more self-reflection. And Alex Shepard of the New Republic wonders if the book's lack of information might cause few minds to be changed. But I think if this is the sort of book that you enjoy, you really have to take a look at it and form your own opinion. And since we have an FBI theme going, another book that came out today is this, The FBI Way by Frank Bigly Uzi. And he is a former FBI, I just dropped him. He was called the Keeper of the FBI's Chief Inspector by Robert Mueller, and was charged with overseeing sensitive internal inquiries and performance audits. So this is basically like a business leadership book using techniques of the FBI. FBI's values into what he calls the 7 C's of code, conservancy, clarity, consequences, compassion, credibility, and consistency. And you can use his tips to preserve your values against all threats, internal and external, the way the FBI does it.
It's been working so well for them this week in particular. And Comey, come on, who's the hoe?
I'll give you all 3 guesses what Patty does professionally.
Comey, how is...
Talk about memoir. Do you read memoir? What, Patty?
How is anyone giving Comey even a tepidly good review for his book? The guy is a blatant grandstander. That would be the nice thing we could say about him. Did anybody forget 2016? You know, the FBI is supposed to be silent and just let things roll out. I mean, another member of this group and I briefly noted that he might be responsible, at least partially, for where we are today without naming any names.
All right.
All right, so.
Okay. There was a Sex and the City episode about Michiko. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your tips on using Zoom better. I will absorb them and maybe contact you separately for some more Zoom tips. So I love reading memoir. I think that, you know, there's just nothing like the great storytelling of a memoir. I think that a good memoir has to be two things. You have to have a good story to tell, and you have to have good writing. And ideally, you have both of these things. So there's a new memoir that just came out today that's already getting a lot of buzz, and that is this book. It's called Aftershocks by Nadia Owusu. And she has won some literary prizes, but this is her first book. And in this book, she assesses the impact of key events in her life using the metaphor of the earthquake. She's the biracial daughter of an Armenian mother and a Ghanaian father, and her life was fractured by her parents' divorce, and her father worked for the UN, so they moved a great deal, and then he died when she was 13. So she definitely has a very powerful story. I have read the first few chapters. I'm not sure I was quite drawn in yet by her storytelling ability, despite the really nice metaphor. I really, I always hearken back to a book like The Liars Club by Mary Karr. And, sometimes looking at these new books, you just want to go back and read the older ones, because Mary Karr has got to be one of the best memoirists around. Great stories, great storytelling, just completely compelling and captivating. Now, there's another new memoir out today. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the work of Ta-Nehisi Coates. His book, Between the World and Me, has been very widely read. So he has a new memoir that came out today. And this is written for a young adult audience, which is not to say that, that adults should not read it, but that is the target market. And he talks about the unusual home in which he grew up. His father was a former Black Panther. He raised 7 children with 4 different mothers, and he raised them all together as one family. And this book is really a lot about Coates's father. His father encouraged his children to read all kinds of books. And Coates said he also encouraged them to explore the neighborhood. He said, "My dad's thinking was that he was raising men, as it came to me, for all seasons. He wanted people who were comfortable in the neighborhood, people who were exposed to things outside the neighborhood, and people who could be comfortable in different worlds." So if you know the sorts of things he's written about what it's like being a Black man in society today, you'll understand where that came from. So Kirkus Reviews, which is a book that's read a lot by librarians, a magazine, and I really respect their reviews, calls it a rare lyrical family memoir that rises above banal domesticity. So I feel like that's a great way to get insight into his life.
I sort of want to know about the 4 women and whether they were part of the family too.
He says that they were, but yeah, I think that it sounds like, again, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it does focus on the father. So I'm not sure how much you would hear about the women, but that is definitely intriguing.
Lynn?
It sounds like his father was a very strong character.
Lynn?
Yes.
Just looking at the crowd in this room, I just finished a memoir, and I never read memoirs, by Laura Lippman. Do you know her, the crime novelist?
Yeah.
She wrote a memoir called My Life as a Villainess.
Oh.
And for women of a certain age, it's really quite fun to read. I really love her work. She's married to David Simon, the guy who, if you were familiar with The Wire.
Yes.
And, Tremaine, he's the guy who did that. So it's just really interesting. She adopted a child at like age 58.
Wow.
And just like observations on being an older woman. It's really sweet.
Thank you. I'll look into it. Thank you. Yeah, again, it's nice when looking at new books.
Like how she became a novelist, that the struggle on going from being a reporter on a, city newspapers to being a novelist. It was really interesting.
Well, that's actually a perfect lead into the next book. This is called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain, and it is by George Saunders. Do you know George Saunders? Have you read Lincoln in the Bardo? So he's a hugely respected writer. He teaches writing at Syracuse University. And this book is sort of based on the classes that he teaches. So he's tried to put his class in a book. And what he does is he looks at the short stories by various Russian writers. And he takes a lesson in understanding how stories are told from each of these stories. So the stories are included in the book, and then his explanation of them comes afterwards. So first of all, I think this is a book that writers should read. Sort of lessons from a master. It's kind of a rare opportunity since we probably can't take his class. And I mean, from everything I hear, people say he's just a great guy and really, really respected. And also the Russians have been hugely popular now. That's a lot of COVID reading that people are doing.
What's the
So-
title again, Lynn?
I'm sorry?
What was the title again?
It's called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain.
Thank you.
And I know a lot of people are talking about how they found Lincoln in the Bardo challenging. There's also an audio book of it, which it sort of distinguishes the voices a little bit, like audiobooks. Okay. Now, I pulled two new novels, both of which have the word wife in the title. That's what they have in common. This one is called The Wife Upstairs. So quick, what piece of literature is this book referencing? Do, 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 do.
Jane Eyre.
Yay, who said that?
I'm an English teacher, so.
Donna, you win the prize tonight. So this is the story. It is indeed a reboot of Jane Eyre by a young adult author. This is her first adult book. It's called a domestic thriller. That's the genre it is. Shortly after starting to walk dogs in Tony Thornfield Estates, a gated community in Birmingham, Alabama, the penniless young woman calling herself Jane meets dashing recent widower Eddie Rochester, whose wealthy wife, Bea Mason, went missing and was presumed drowned. All right, so there's that. And I really have to say, again, sometimes I just have a chance to read the first few pages or chapters of the. I'm going to recommend that if you're interested in Jane Eyre, then read Jane Eyre. And if you haven't read it in a while, reread it. And if you've never read it, then absolutely, it's such an amazing book. And then if you want to read a book that is based on Jane Eyre, then read Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, which explores the backstory of the wife. The other new book is called Charmed Wife, and this is by Olga Grushin, and she is a writer from Moscow, and this one is a retelling of Cinderella. And I'm sorry to say that the reviews are terrible, and the reason I'm bringing it up is, there are two reasons I'm bringing it up. First of all, if you'd like to read, if you'd like to read fiction based on fairy tales, who's read, I think we did this in my class, Boy Snowbird by Helen Oyeyemi. And Olga Grushin wrote an amazing book called 40 Rooms, right? The people who've done my Hot Off the Press class with me, we read that. And where she looks at how women live their lives in different rooms, and she follows the life of this woman through the different rooms she lived in. I thought it was a brilliant book. And then those were the highlights of what is new this week. I will mention, because it's what I've been reading, Shuggie Bain, right? So has anyone, yeah. Would you all like to?
So on my holds list,
I read it. I read it. Thought
You
it was
read it, Jean?
it was a very dark book, but shouldn't say I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good read.
Well, so we have all read lots of books that maybe we appreciate them more when we're finished reading them. And we talk about them. It was I have a tendency to read books that are dark and depressing but it's been a while since a book has affected my mood this much, where I'll have a
Right.
session reading it and then I'm finished and I'm just sitting in the chair and I'm just like, so it's a tough book. It's a tough book.
Is it like Angela's Ashes, that kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Takes place in Ireland, I think also, doesn't it?
Well,
I think
In
Scottish.
Ireland.
Glasgow.
Scottish?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scottish, but
Scottish, yeah.
same weather. Same.
Yeah, right. Same depressing place. Yeah.
Yep.
Lynn, what is the name again? And how do you spell it?
The one I just had,
Yeah.
Shuggie Bain, is Shuggie, Bain, Bain. That's the name of the main character, who's a young boy.
Great. Thank you.
It's actually gotten a lot of press.
Well, it won the Booker, right?
Yeah.
And so just to jump, because Diana had asked me to maybe at some point, I'll talk about this more fully, but just the question of how we value awards. Do you guys feel like if a book won a literary prize that's meaningful to you?
Sometimes.
Yeah. I'll pick it up if it has that on the cover.
Okay.
Some of them more than others.
Like, which ones do you trust the
I'm
most,
not a
Kathy?
huge fan of the Man Booker,
Yeah.
but National Book Award and Pulitzer are usually pretty good.
Yeah. Did you read The Overstory?
I love the
I did. That was
Overstory.
excellent.
Yeah.
Really excellent.
Yeah. I think the only one the Pulitzer's kind of slipped on was Less by Andrew
Yes.
John Greer. I liked the book. I
I
liked
don't like it at all.
I did. I guess it just didn't have the gravitas of some of the other winners, but it was humorous and light and enjoyable.
It was.
Do I have the definition of a Pulitzer correct? That it's a book that depicts a time and a place? I thought that was a definition of what a Pulitzer Prize book was.
You know, Jean, that sounds right, but I'll do some research and I'll tell you next week what the criteria are for the Pulitzer.
Because Shipping News was definitely a time and a place in Nova Scotia, and that won a Pulitzer. And I just thought that was really indicative of that place.
Shipping News is such a brilliant, wonderful book.
And it depicted the place beautifully.
Yes.
Do you want to hear my story about Annie Proulx?
Sure.
When I was an editor at Ballantine Books, I got stuck editing gardening books. And of course, since I know nothing about gardening, I had to hire a professional gardener to review some of the manuscripts. So we would pay this person to read them and critique them. And that person was Annie Proulx.
Wow.
So that is how she made a living before she became a well-known writer.
Well, it's a very short gardening season in Nova Scotia.
And you
Yeah.
trusted her.
Yeah, I agree with Kathy. I like the National Book Awards a lot. I feel like they're my favorite awards. And then
I was going to say, I did look up under the Pulitzer FAQs. It
Yeah.
says there are no set criteria for the judging of the prizes. The definitions of each category are the only guidelines, but it's left up to the nominating juries and the Pulitzer Prize board to determine exactly what makes a work distinguished. So I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe there's more to it, but that's what they say.
Okay, thank you. Thank
So
you.
Lynn, could I ask Kathy and you and anybody else who wants to jump in? I mean, obviously these awards are also so political, right? I mean, certainly the Nobel Prize has been very political over the years. And so I don't know, you know, the Man Booker Prizes too, right? Last year, 2 people won it. So Margaret Atwood won it, and I forget her name, but she wrote,
What was it called?
I forget it. But anyway, so why, Kathy, do you not like the Man Booker as compared to other prizes where you maybe trust the stamp, more?
I think it's just about some of their selections over the years. It's not really political for me. Like, I think, for example, and this will be an unpopular statement, but I think Life of Pi won the Man Booker, and I really did not enjoy Life of Pi. And so I think it's that, like, I will see who wins in any given year. And I'm sure in some years they pick great books, but some years I'm like, really? But it seems like the National Book Award, for example, is pretty consistently books that I like. Now, obviously, books that I like are not necessarily the best books. It just so happens that they seem to pick books that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think
Lynn, maybe we should give a prize every year at the end of the year. We'll have our own prize.
I actually like that idea.
The Get Lit Award.
The Get Lit Award. All right, let's work on that.
Okay.
We have just a few minutes left, and I would love to know if anyone has any questions they'd like to raise. And I would also love you to shoot me an email and tell me the kinds of things you'd like me to talk about in future sessions, because I'm happy to go in those directions. And we can spend time sometimes talking more in depth about particular books instead of highlights of lots of books. And so does anyone have any comments as I wrap up today?
Lynn, I just finished a book you recommended in your email, the What Are You Going Through?
Yes.
By Sigrid Nunez.
Yes.
And I just want to tell you, I really enjoyed it. I read it really quickly and I just loved her voice.
Thanks.
It got very mixed reviews from what I could see, like on Amazon, from regular consumers, but I really enjoyed it a lot.
Well, that's because you're a very sophisticated reader.
Clearly. Seriously, though, it was a good recommendation.
Thank you for telling me that. I'm glad. I like her work a lot, and I liked her previous book, The Friend, and I recommend that. Those are the only two books, and I'll speak on behalf of Diana, who was inspired to read Sempre Susan, which is a memoir of Sigrid Nunez's time dating Susan Sontag's son and living with them, and she's an interesting person. So there are two more books. Yeah. Anybody else want to share anything?
Lynn, I just wanted to share, I mentioned this in the email to you.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite magazines.
Yes.
And I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it comes every 2 months, and not only does it review and talk about new books, but it also, like, it has an article this time about tortured protagonists, and goes through, like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and a whole lot of different ones. And then you had mentioned this book last week, I think.
I can't see what it is.
The Cold Millions.
Oh yeah.
Talking about that.
Yes.
And so it's got a bunch of reviews from it. And
did they like it? Did they like it?
They did like it. They all gave it.
You're right, Jean. You're right. You win.
I loved it. I loved it. It was like a Western. It was really, I just thought I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Hi, Tanya. Another Floridian just arrived.
Hi. Sorry for being late.
Yeah, that's all right. We're about to end. Sorry to say, but I know the Cold Million. Jane, did you have a comment?
I just, when you were talking about memoirs, and you may have talked about it the week before. I just finished Memorial Drive.
Oh yeah.
It's just a beautifully written.
Yes.
Book. It's sad. It's about the writer's stepfather murdered her mother. So I mean, it's not like it's a sad book, but the writing is so beautiful, and it's short. I think it was like about 180 pages. So
see,
I actually think that won some awards. I don't.
Yeah.
remember.
I think that's a great recommendation, Jane. Natasha, I always forget her last name. Trethani.
Trethaway, and she's a poet.
Yeah.
Isn't she the poet laureate right now or not? I don't know.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah,
right.
Natasha Trethaway. Yeah.
Right. So she is a fabulous writer, obviously, and a very dramatic story. And something like she in writing the book, she went back and listened to the 911 call or something like that.
Yeah, actually, the transcript. There's a transcript of her mother talking to the police.
Oh.
Yeah, that's really something.
What was the name of that one?
Memorial Drive.
Memorial Drive. I'll type it in here. And you can get it at Barnes and Noble. There you go. There's my plug for the night. Well, I'm gonna be continuing to read Shuggy Bane tonight. I don't know what you guys are gonna read. Yeah, Julie.
Strangers by Tana French.
Oh, I've never read her, but I hear she's really good.
She's a real read.
Yeah.
Page turner, page turner.
Yeah.
I love her. She is one of
Yeah.
my favorites. And
Did
all
you
of her
read,
books
did
are
you
great.
read Searcher yet, the newest one?
Yes, it was good. Different.
I'm about halfway.
Very
I started
different.
yesterday. It's one of
You
those
like her
books.
too, Anne?
Yeah, I
Oh.
do. I've read most of her books and I read the current one, Searcher.
All right, so which one should I read first?
Oh, I can't remember. Her first one was really good. And then Into the Woods was her first one, I think.
Yep.
All right, maybe that's
I
what I
think that was a good one.
You don't have to read those. So that's part of her Dublin Murder series. You don't have to read them in order, but you probably want to just to
Okay.
she repeats characters and
Okay.
she
What's
draws
the
them
one
out.
with the-
Searchers is a
Witch
standalone though. Searchers is standalone.
Okay,
Yeah.
then maybe I'll read that. All right, so really quickly, I'm sorry, but I do want to keep us in our time frame. Irene, The Vanishing Half, she mentioned, and Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half, is getting a lot of attention right now. She's a really good writer, and if you want to try
Prose.
you can go start with her first novel as well, called The Mothers, which is really good. So if you feel like you'd rather get the paperback rather than a new hardcover, The Mothers is a great way to get to know the work of Britt Bennett. I've heard great things about The Weight of Ink, Rachel Kaddish, and American Dirt, I think, is a compelling story. And I don't know if, Deb, you know all about the controversy around it. Because I think that's become, for me, like, I feel like don't read the book without knowing everything that happened around it.
Yeah. I'm actually reading it for my book group, but I didn't know about that before I began to read it. So
Right. So thank you all so much for joining me. I love being with you. I'll be same time next week, and send me notes about what you'd like me to talk about, and I'll have more new books for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
very
safe,
much.
everybody.
Stay
Stay
well.
safe.
Bye.
Thank you, Lynn. That was fun.
Thank you. My pleasure.